Hey everybody, it's Alexander Dahl with Manifest Brutality once again. So I have yet another interview ready to go, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be here as the talking head saying I have an interview ready to go. So about that interview that's ready to go, let's go ahead and get into that interview that is ready to go. All right, here you go. Bye. All right, so I'm currently on the phone with Robert. He's another one of the musicians that reached out to me about the interview series going on. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Hello, thanks for having me today. So I'm Robert Luna. I've been in the Twin Cities, about a quarter of a century, but lived in Orlando before that. And that's kind of where most of my music was getting, coming of age, that type of thing. Started playing drums when I was about 11, got really interested when I was about 11 years old, decades ago. But I think the biggest part that really helped me kind of find, my voice right off the bat was just kind of seeing the different performances that were happening either, in those days in TV or, at a live show or something, or even at, amusement parks where they had music and bands, live musicians. It just kind of interested me. So I begged my parents for a kit, got a kit, and started off very heavily influenced by rock at that time, Rush, Black Sabbath, and Kiss, and all those bands that are big when you're, at that age. But that's how I started, essentially.
Excellent. So you kind of tapped into some of the questions that I usually start with about, how you first found music, and what was it about music that you identified as something that, you want to participate in?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I noticed right off the bat was, a lot of the uniqueness of what the drums as an instrument looked like, and the music that it was driving behind it, essentially. The instrument itself was so dynamic as far as its appearance even. I mean, you could probably pick out, a guitar. It's either an acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and they look pretty much the same where people hold them, where, they're not ridiculously different when you go to see a show. Mm-hmm. But the drums were such an expansive setup. I mean, you had so many different components, and some people had small kits and still could just blow you away with how much they could express on those small kits, 2 and 3, 4-piece kits. And then you had these monstrosities of, that were in the rock ages of just these huge kits that you'd think, how can anyone ever play all those drums? And it really interested me because it was something that almost became like a unique signature for the individual drummer to be able to kind of build his or her sound along the lines of what they're architecturally constructing, with that instrument. So that's kind of what piqued my interest and kind of said, yeah, I think I'd like to explore what that looks like, what that sounds like, what I could do with it.
Sure. And so was it kind of just outside of the regular school curriculum that you found drums, or did you participate in concert band at all?
Yeah, surprisingly, it was outside the normal, exposure that, young kids would get in a school environment, or even just in forced upon lessons or things like that. Mm-hmm. I actually started in second grade with the guitar, and it just wasn't for me. I just found it really, it just didn't fit me. It didn't fit my hands. I didn't really understand a lot of the theory at that time, and it was difficult. It all makes a big difference who's teaching you, obviously. But when the drums came along, and I actually had, my parents said, well, you have to learn the right way. You have to take lessons and learn theory. I think that helped because it put some order and structure into the learning of it, but it also kind of started to guide you down a path of, the discipline of having to practice, the discipline of having to evolve, an exercise or a rudiment, and kind of made you start to form the idea of, hey, I can get this, or I need to work on that, or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. But it was really, for me, it was exciting because it kind of was an exploration, I guess, is the best way to describe it.
Sure. And so when you did start playing drums, obviously it takes years to learn any instrument, but how long would you really say it took you from, beginning to learn to feeling really confident to the point where you could start accompanying other players?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I was all gung ho to get in a band. I had a really good friend at the time, and right in grade school that we were just determined to get a band together. And he had a cousin who played guitar as well. So our goal was to play a talent show, I think, and we were probably 13 years old at the time. So a couple of years, practicing, and you only learned a couple of songs, but it was that drive, to be able to perform, and because that's what you've seen. You've been influenced by these other drummers and bands and musicians and performances, and that's kind of where you're headed. You want to be able to at least attempt it, if not succeed at it.
Sure, definitely. And once you did get to that point where you're starting to play with other people, what kind of bands were you driven to? What kind of really meshed with your play style the best?
Well, growing up and listening to radio and records, at the time, it became one of those things where I gravitated to some genres to listen to, and then I gravitated to more of a variety of styles to play. I think it was about the complexity, because you heard pop music on the radio, you heard, kind of middle of the road rock, and you thought, okay, it's probably doable. And then you heard some of the more complex things, some more, some of the progressive type of rock bands that were around at the time and forming at the time. And then you thought, okay, that's aspirational. That's something that could be really fun to try and fun to experiment with and learn and, get good at. And I think that's kind of what led me to being more of a variety of, or liking to play a more variety of genres. I ended up, the first few bands that I was in were more rock oriented, but I would categorize them as, more kind of the middle of the road rock, nothing too extravagant, nothing too complex or, odd time signatures or anything. That came later for me, but yeah, that's where it started.
Okay. And, what kind of musician do you think best accommodates to your style, genre-wise?
Genre-wise, I think it's anyone who challenges, the norm. Anyone who starts to build a structure that, they actually have parts that they're thinking about alternatively to the rhythm or the melody that they're presenting to you. Mm-hmm. It's something that always builds upon itself. I work with a really good bassist named Brian Greedle. And he, in our band, he plays a lot of the melodies and components that I think he already knows that can be built upon, or even he might even have parts that are derived from them. Mm-hmm. And in knowing that, I think in knowing that foundation is there to build on, it gives you the freedom. It gives me as a drummer the freedom to experiment or complement or dynamically produce something that isn't the norm, that wouldn't be the expected thing. They say sometimes the best parts are the notes that you don't play, and I think that plays a big part of how I like to work with musicians that kind of feel the same way, or actually, like I said, have more parts in their head than they're sharing at the moment. But the song and the performance can evolve into that, and I think that's a really good mixture.
Sure, definitely. So to kind of expand on that, how much do you think like counterbalance in rhythm and melody really plays into the way that you approach drums?
I think it's different for every drummer, because there are some drummers who complement the song by being that rock, being that foundational beat, tempo set, and kind of just that anchor. And then there are other drummers who fit within the rhythm and play very well with the bass and any of the lower registers. But don't interfere with any of the melodies. Don't interfere with vocals. Don't interfere with, things that might be out front. Something that might be more recognizable to the listener. And I think in doing that, it definitely gives you an opportunity to kind of check yourself, especially when you hear yourself, recorded, and you hear how it blends with everything else. Because you hear something entirely different when you're behind a drum set than when you're out front listening to a recording of what's been played, or even when you're out in the audience and hearing what a drummer's doing. So that's pretty key for me. I think it's becoming that complementary, yet having that complementary contributor, but you also have this tiny bit of a signature that you want to, in some places, dynamically showcase, but also not be obtrusive.
Absolutely. I myself am a drummer, and to kind of build off kind of what you're getting at there, when you're sitting behind the kit and you hear a song going at a specific tempo, you kind of just feel into it. But then when you hear it played back, you're just like, I swear this was slower.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a whole conversation about timekeeping.
Right. So no, that's fine. So where you're at now, it sounds like you're in a really comfortable setting with the current band that you're working on. How did you come to find the people that you're working with, and what is the band that you're currently in?
Sure. So I'm in two bands right now. My band, the original band, is House Luna, and the name is, I coined it. It's kind of a history type of situation there. Being a drummer, and you'll relate to this pretty well. Being a drummer, you join a band, and let's say 2 years later the band breaks up, and usually the drummer walks away with hardly anything, right? I mean, whoever wrote the songs, whoever has the lyrics, whoever has the melodies, and continues that band or retires that music, it probably will affect what you play next. You probably won't take those same exact beats and setups and any of those pieces into the next iteration of whatever band you play with. And for the longest time, I've been in about 18 or 19 bands in my life, and it became one of those things where I became frustrated with that, with leaving all of that energy and all of the contribution kind of right there where it died with the band breakup, or whatever it became. It just dissolved. So I started to think about, what is it that can make more of a signature for the drummer or the percussionist, the rhythmist, if you were, and what does it take to do that? And so I started experimenting more with electronics. I started to build in loops and sound effects, sample sounds, triggered drums. I even had at one point I had a half acoustic, half electronic setup that I built my own triggers for. I invested in a system called a drum cat made by Alternate Mode, which was probably one of the most unique and advanced tools. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it definitely had some components that made for an expansive array of percussion and drum-like sounds. So with that, I think I looked for that unique signature that could be ported and could be founded, by a drummer. So I started that band. I fortunately was part of this music scene website at the time here in the Twin Cities, and there were a lot of like-minded people there, a lot of sharing. There was a co-op at the time called Area 52, and people would play, go on Friday nights. It was kind of a after-hours kind of bottle club situation. And we had this opportunity to kind of experiment with different types of music, different musicians, different genres. And eventually I kind of landed with two key players, both of which are with me still in the band after 20 years, which is just blowing my mind at this point. And it really worked out. We went through a lot of guitarists. So that was the bassist and the keyboardist. Actually, the bassist and the vocalist, Ryan Weber and Brian Greedle. Ryan Weber came to the band originally, because we were collaborating with a lot of different musicians. He came in as a keyboardist, but said, "Hey, I can sing as well." And boy, could he sing. Yeah, he definitely sings very well. So he became the vocalist. He still plays keys, but that was the kind of the core. So it was us three. And then we looked for that guitarist for many years, and some came and went, and some weren't really the fit. And then we found Dan Dessy. I guess it's probably almost been 10 years now, and he's been a really good fit and a contributor to the development of our music. And so that's how that band came into fruition. Then the other band, since I was a kid, I mentioned Black Sabbath. I've been in a Black Sabbath cover band. I won't call it a tribute band because we don't all really look like any of the Black Sabbath members, but we've been playing for a few years now. We just have a new guitarist that joined as well. And that's another project that I just find a lot of enjoyment with because of the if you think about it, I was talking about the unique signature, Bill Ward, the drummer for Black Sabbath for so many years in the early years, had that signature. He had that unique portable type of sound and approach that has stuck around for many, many decades. And I really admired that, along with a couple of other bands like that. And so I just found it a great opportunity when I was asked to join a Black Sabbath cover band, and it's been just fun ever since.
Out of curiosity, what's the name of the Black Sabbath cover band?
It was named by the original founder. It's called Bleak Sabbath.
Okay. I only ask because I have a friend who was a guitarist that recently joined a Black Sabbath cover band called Sabotage.
Yeah, I've heard of Sabotage, yeah.
Okay. So, that's where you are now. You're in a good place where you're making music. What are some, like, really prominent memories for you about music? Whether it be, going to a show, something that really stuck in your mind and inspired you, or, like, recording a piece of music you were really strong about?
Yeah, those are all really good topics. I'll hit one of them right off the bat. I think one of the most inspiring and humbling experiences I had was in Orlando when the band I was with got to open for a band called Toad the Wet Sprocket, which I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're kind of middle of, alternative is what they used to call it, but indie, I guess now. They're still around. But so Toad the Wet Sprocket came on into this small club and set up and just blew us away. I mean, the musicianship was just through the roof. And I think they had about 6 or 7 members in the band, and everyone contributed so, I guess, honestly, and was such a fit for the type of music that they were doing. And it was one of those things where it was eye-opening because, we had been in a period of time where we had been opening for different bands. And I was in another band at the time as well. We opened for Social Distortion, Killing Joke, Mojo Nixon, some bands from that era. And it was interesting because nothing like that had ever happened, where you were taken aback a little bit by the musicianship and the professionalism and the overall humility that you feel when you just see somebody who's doing it and doing it to the extent that they were doing it. I mean, touring, recording, engaging their audiences, just being present in the moment, and that kind of really stuck with me. It meant a great deal because, you see a lot of bands throughout your life, and you see, some of them are memorable and others are not, some because of the music, some because of the people. But in this case, it was memorable for me because of just the experience that I had with the band, hearing them do sound check, watching them set up and do, all the preparations beforehand, interacting with people beforehand, interacting with people during the show and after the show. And it was, like I said, it was really kind of a nice experience. So that was one thing. Other things, I got to do one thing when I was at work, believe it or not. I used to work for Target Corporation, and before that, it was another part of the corporation was what is now Macy's, which at that point was Marshall Field's, and they did a kind of a fashion, what they called Fash Bash or Glamorama, and got an opportunity to play with one of the acts that was there, called Bond Quartet, and we ended up doing, so it's stringed instruments, and they ended up doing Led Zeppelin's Kashmir, and they had we did a backline kind of thing, and it's all the backline is essentially with lip synced, essentially, that's not really playing, but you're not really playing, so they're playing but you're not, and the rest are tracks. But it was just a unique experience. I got to play at the State Theater here, and then got to play in Chicago Theater in Chicago, and that was just amazing to play to a full house and just have that experience. I haven't had that happen very many times, so it was nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. So where can people actually check out the stuff you're working on and take a listen to your stuff?
Sure. So right now we're finishing up our second recording, and it's just been mastered. Rare Form Mastering just finished doing the mastering for it. Should be released here hopefully within the next few weeks. I'm really excited about it. It's something we recorded ourselves, but had F5 Studios Owen Sartori and his team essentially did all the mixing and like I said, we had it mastered by Greg Ryerson at Rare Form Mastering here in the Twin Cities, and we're just really happy with how it turned out, and we can't wait to do it again, write more music and get it out there. So hopefully that'll be out. So Facebook's probably the best place to find anything that we post about gigs and that type of thing, or even just some music that we post. It's either live recordings, or we just did a thing at IPR over in Edina for their live sound support classes, where they need a band to come in and actually, put on a concert, and they do the lighting and the sound and all the everything you'd see in a real club or a real venue. They do. And we have that entire concert up on our Facebook page right now if you wanted to take a look at that. So that's where you'd find that. And then the Bleak Sabbath band, we're excited to get back out there to play again. Hopefully we can do that soon. Last big thing we did was Rockfest in Quartet, Wisconsin. And then the last show we played before the pandemic shut everything down was at, Lone Wolf? No. I think I'm Part Wolf over in Minneapolis. We did that show on March 6th of 2020, and everything got shut down like the week after that. So that was a fortunate show that we got to do with both my bands actually played that night. So that was fun. But yeah, we'll be playing Twin Cities shows hopefully in the near future, and getting back into it and see where we go from there.
Excellent. So I always like to give the person that I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last word, essentially a message that, you feel really resonates with you.
Oh, yeah, thank you for that opportunity. Yeah, the only thing I was thinking about that as I heard some of your other guests, I think the thing that's happening right now there are so many great music groups that are related out there, bulletin boards, that type of thing that used to be in the past is now like more blogs and Facebook experiences or user groups. And there's just a lot of people that are, like I was when I was, 11 years old, just super excited to learn a new instrument and get out there and start to try. And there's so many people that are supportive of that. But there's just as many people who are critical and don't support, people who are trying to learn. And I just have to throw out there, not everybody knew how to play the first day. It's like we got to give support to a lot of those people that are just learning or just getting interested, or maybe not. They're just considering learning a new instrument, and they look at these groups and these pages, and if they see that kind of interaction where it's like, well, it's not even going to be supported, I'm not even going to try, that thing. So I just kind of say, look at it from the point of view of when you were first learning. Give support to people who want to learn an art, whether it be instrument or photography, art, whatever it is. Give them the support that they that they kind of deserve to at least try, and at least get out there and put something out there that might be really, really life-changing for someone else. And I think if we support that, it's going to make a big difference in how we develop our culture and our art scene.